Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, 1960, filmed in black and white, but just for the sake of cost effectiveness. Apparently this film was not supposed to be one of the big hits of Alfred Hitchcock's filmography, but you wouldn't know that living in the modern day. You would assume this was his magnum opus. It has now garnered a reputation today in the modern world for being dun 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 dun. But, when it first came out, apparently it was released to much more mixed and middling views. But these days, we generally regard it as a kind of masterpiece. I gave it a 4 stars out of 5. Good film. I was in a good mood watching it. I watched it with some friends the first time, and I'm actually just coming off of another watch right now. I literally just finished watching it because I wanted to be able to talk about this off the cuff, and I don't have a whole lot of time in this recording session to talk about it now. Maybe I'll come back later if I have anything more to say, but we're going to do the best we can right here. Let's see. I don't want to give this film more attention than what I gave the last one, Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation.
Nihon ni Japan.
Japan.
Upper. Japan upper.
Japan.
Upper.
After.
Upper.
Japan.
Upper. Nanen.
Nanen.
But at the same time, it feels disingenuous to try and bring that Lost in Translation to the level that this was operating at, because I can recognize, that this film was doing a lot of things in terms of like camera planning and execution that just wasn't happening in something like Lost in Translation. I'll just list off the things that I think earned it the 4 stars and then talk about why it didn't get that 5th. This film was a hallmark, or rather the introduction to a sort of violent psychological slasher film. It has a very strong focus on the gender roles of these characters, which was slightly unexpected. I think there's something to note in that of all the things that this movie has done in the wake of its release to become an icon, right? Of everything that consists of the Psycho icon as a film, you don't really think about it being gender related in any way, but it is. It really is. The film opens and it's about Marion Crane, the, I guess, false protagonist of the film. We follow her talking to her wannabe fiance. They want to get married, her and Sam, but Sam is dealing with a number of debts from a previous relationship, which also comes up in Hitchcock's Stranger on a Train. That's like the whole premise. Is like, the guy wants to, Guy? No, not Guy.
I beg your pardon. Aren't you Guy Haynes?
The other one. No, that was Guy.
Bruno Anthony. See?
Not Bruno. Guy wants to,
Oh, sure.
well, he doesn't want to, anyway, that's a different film.
Oh, I certainly admire people who do things.
Suffice to say, that's something that's appeared in a previous Hitchcock film. And it's the kind of main propelling force behind this whole series of events. It's a series of mistakes, ultimately, because in order to get married, Marion wants to try and alleviate Sam of this debt that exists before the story even starts. And one day at Marion's job, a very boisterous, annoying, very misogynistic man comes in and says, "Oh, my sweet girl. Oh, but not you, Marion. I'm not talking to you." Even though I guess the expectation is that he would have been, because she kind of was like, huh?
Marion, will you get the copies of that deed ready for Mr. Cassidy?
Tomorrow's the day, my sweet little girl. Oh, not you. My daughter.
And he's like, "Oh, no, not you, my beautiful little girl. I meant my beautiful little girl, my daughter." who's not a little girl, she's 18. Here's a picture of her. She's 18. She's getting married. And I'm going to buy them a house. You know, I'm this big, rich asshole character who's impressing my strength and power and my ability to buy happiness or buy away unhappiness is the phrasing. Interesting phrasing, honestly. But my power gives me the ability to provide for others in the way that you, Marion Crane, would like to be provided for. And so the thrust of her character is that she's actually considering taking power away from this guy. He is flaunting it so brazenly that he's just like, yep, I'm going to buy, in what is today's dollars, this is a film from 1960, but in today's dollars, nearly $500,000 house for my daughter and her fiance, for her soon-to-be husband. And I'm just going to, you know, lay this money out here on the table because you know, you work at the financier. This money is essentially going to be going to your boss, and I'm going to go talk to your boss now, and we're going to have a little bit of a drink. Here's the money, sweetheart. Put this away in the bank for me. Thank you. Marion, in the possession of all this money, which everybody else in the film is kind of like, what, you know, gives weight to it by going like, whoa, that's a lot of fucking money in cash to have on you, man. You just want to give that to a girl? And he's like, yeah, I never carry around so much that I can't afford to lose it. Take it. I trust you. Go. Put it in the bank for me. Considering how much he's flaunting it, the thought strikes Marion then to maybe take it for herself. And that's not an easy choice. That ends up being the catalyst for everything that happens in the film going forward, is she makes this choice to try and strike out against this problem that she has and this seeming villain that she's kind of concocted of this guy who's really just kind of boisterous and a bit of an arrogant asshole in front of her. And she kind of thinks, I'm gonna get one up on this dude and take what's mine, right? She takes this money. She says she's going to go to the bank, but she ends up back at her apartment, you know, in her bedroom, whatever it might be, house, whatever, in Phoenix, Arizona, actually. And this film takes place on my birthday, December 11th. That was fun to see, right in big text. And yeah, so she ends up back in her apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's looking at the money. She hasn't gone to the bank yet. She actually took it back to her apartment with her, and she's just looking at it, and she can't stop looking at it. It's the solution to like her one problem right now. And so she's thinking and thinking and thinking, and eventually she makes a decision. I'm going to try and get away with this. I have it now. I could just keep having it. I'm going to just walk away with it. And she starts driving, I guess, towards Los Angeles is the idea. But as she's starting to drive west, she sees her boss there and is frazzled. He sees her, and she starts to think. We get this interior monologue inside the brain of the character, which is a very interesting decision because we get both her interior thoughts as well as Anthony Perkins's character, Norman Bates. We get a lot of his interior, though we don't know that until the very end. She's frazzled. She's worrying that her boss actually saw her driving west. Not necessarily that he suspects anything, but it starts to you know, drive her a little, what's going to happen now? I'm deciding to do this great big bad thing. I could get caught. And I was already kind of sloppy right out of the gate. My boss saw me leaving. So she's trying to drive out to Sam, and it takes a couple days to get out there. She sleeps in the car on the side of the road overnight. Cop shows up, knocks on her window, says, "You can't be sleeping out here. What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm perfectly innocent." And he says, "That's not an appropriate response to a police officer. I need to see a little bit of identification." She says, "Here's my identification. While you're looking at that, I'm going to drive away." And she drives away. And she ends up at this dealership in California at this point, a used car dealership, and she starts talking to the guy there, high pressuring the car salesman into just giving her a car. The cop followed her the whole way here, and he's not like, stop. He doesn't say, stop right there, criminal scum. You violated the law. He's just sort of pacing after her, it's strange. Like I've I've heard it described sometimes that like, you know, animals who are prey in like the animal kingdom can run really fast in order to escape a predator. But what makes man such an intimidating predator to be chased by is that they don't have to be fast. They just sort of have to be persistent, and that's how the cop is. He follows her to this car dealership, and she says, "Please, car dealership man, take my fucking money. Take it in cash. I'm gonna give it to you. Give me a car. Give me a car now. I need to get out of here now." And he says, "Why are you being so weird with this? I'll take your money, but why are you being so weird?"
Your car plus $700?
700.
You always got time to argue money, huh?
All right.
I take it you can prove that car is yours. I mean, out-of-state license and all. You got your pink slip and
I believe I have the necessary papers. Is there a ladies' room?
in the building.
She gets a car. The cop is like right behind her. It's an odd scene. I would say this might be maybe where I lose half a star. There are some situations in this movie that are just sort of like, fucking why? It's fun for the sake of the story. You know, things piece together, and it's still an entertaining experience. But it is strange and a little unexplainable. And when you have something like this, I guess today, I'm examining it with a standard that didn't exist in the time in which it was created. But at this point, I've come to expect from my movies that there's a little bit more realism, or at least an explanation that the narrative can find satisfying. Whether or not I find that satisfying as the audience is really up to me and how much I'm willing to give, you know, a bit of leeway to the movie. But in this, that's the last we see of that officer. He just sort of stays behind at the car dealership while she drives away with this brand new car. So he saw the whole exchange go down. So he knows that she's driving a new car and what it looks like and all of that. But that is the last that we see of that officer. Obviously, the law gets involved later, and people start asking what the hell's going on with Marion. But that just being the last bit of that scene and that kind of tale of the narrative is a little weird, a little strange. But she drives away, and again, we're getting the internal monologue, and she's freaking out even more. Obviously, everything about what she's just gone through and done was D performance as it goes for trying to get away with crime, stealing. Again, in today's dollars, almost $500,000. You can't do what she did. She didn't get away with it, and she knows that at this point. But she's still trying to run at this point. She's not quite sure what she's doing. She's just being propelled by her first decision to try and secure a bit of happiness for herself into a series of worsening accidents and mistakes. She ends up at the Bates Motel, the famous Bates Motel. Very well introduced in the film. Today, I think you could know the Bates Motel separately from your understanding of Psycho. Again, it just exists as a sort of pop culture icon that we can kind of know without actually really understanding the origin or the roots of where it comes from. But Bates Motel, she pulls up, and it's that arrangement of the motel being down by the road, right? And then up the hill is the house where Mother lives. Really, at this point, such a classic arrangement for the set that it almost like kind of goes unnoticed. When you're trying to get involved with a piece of fiction or narrative of any kind, you are trying to piece it together. It's a sort of puzzle that you are being led to the conclusion of. And in this circumstance, I think this is just such a familiar shape for a jigsaw piece to form into. We have kind of become blind to how really well set up this whole situation is with the Bates Motel. Just the Bates Motel itself, everything to do with that 3 stars. In the book, apparently, that this is based on, I've done a bit of reading on, not a lot of reading, I've done a bit of reading on Wikipedia, so, a summary of actual first-hand sources. But apparently, the original book that this is based on, he was a much less redeemable character. You're really meant to feel for him in this movie, especially because he kills the main character and then becomes the main character. And he's much more likable than he was in the book. Apparently, in the book, he was like addicted to alcohol and porn, and was super misogynistic and I think racist at some point. Books obviously have a lot more time to get into like a character's psyche and stuff like that. Never really comes up in this film, the racism, but I don't know. Maybe they got rid of that. He's a murderer, psychopath, psycho. There could be something up here where he's like, don't like those people. Maybe women is actually part of that, because the one woman that shows up, he has to kill, I guess, in order to satiate this conflicting idea that he has of her in his head in accordance to what he feels like he owes his mother. It's a whole thing with his relationship with his dead mother, who he killed 10 years ago, and he kills this new woman because there's a conflict mentally, for him. And really at the core of this is Norman Bates. He is the main character, and the PR job that they did on him for this movie, really great. Apparently could have been much worse. So he kills Marion after they talk about being stuck in their own traps in life, right? There are certain expectations that everybody has where you don't necessarily want to have to fulfill them, or you feel like you're obligated to fulfill them. People have things that they have to deal with in life that keeps them stuck in a way. And that their conversation shortly before she's murdered kind of explores that with the two characters. At the end of their conversation, she decides, I need to go and try and untrap myself. I have to leave and I have to go figure out my life. And Norman Bates at this point is still very much in the grasp of his trap, although he might not even really be able to at that point see it. But he's also just as unaware as Marion is that she has entered his trap as well. So her explaining to him that she wants to leave and go back and try and fix her life, I think is also part of why he ends up murdering her in the guise of his mother. Because she's about to leave his trap. He doesn't get to have people in his life anymore. And so he wants to try and have that like he has the birds, these inanimate things that were really hard to picture as ever being alive for him, and kind of sit as a reminder that they might have been beautiful if only they were alive. And that's largely how Norman lives. He's not really alive. He's sort of doing the animate thing, but he's stuck at the Bates Motel. She dies. He becomes the new main character, and he has to clean up her mess. His mother's mess. Because at this point, he doesn't actually recognize that his mother isn't alive. And his performing and dressing up as her is, according to the film, like his way of dealing with the fact that he poisoned her long time ago, 10 years ago in the narrative. It then comes back to the people Marion left behind. It goes to her sister Lila and Sam, the fiance. And the two of them are like, what happened to Marion? She's not showing up. Where's she gone? People eventually start asking questions. So do the police. She was chased out there, by the policemen, and so it's gotten back to the family members. And the actor Martin Balsam, he comes in and he's like, well, let's all talk about Marion for a second, because I got a couple questions I need to ask you folks. They try to give him a bit of a runaround, but they don't even really know what's going on either. So everybody's left in the dark, and he says, don't worry, I'm going to go figure out what's going on out there. He ends up at the Bates Motel, gives Norman a bit of a reading, not like a fortune teller, but like, questioning, an interview rather. and he's fallen apart at the seams. Again, D performance in terms of like criminal assessments, right? Like this is not, don't behave like this. If you're going to do big crimes, do better. Do better than what goes on in this movie, because everybody gets caught. Arbogast, that's his name, by the way, Martin Balsam. He plays a character named Arbogast, which is just sick, you know? He obviously is suspecting Norman, and Norman brings up his mother being up in the house. He doesn't want Arbogast to go talk to the mother, so he denies him entry. Arbogast goes and reports back some of the information about his mother being there, and then goes and tries to talk to his mother on his own. Norman, turns out, is already on his way up there and in his mother's room, dressed up as his mother, and gets Arbogast right there at the top of the stairs. Terrible murder scene, I have to say, like, really bad. I said earlier I was watching this with my friends. We kind of couldn't get over how badly done that one was. You know, again, it was trying things that were really new for film in a lot of ways. I would say, of all the things that were well executed, Arbogast was not one. Cuts back to the gang back home. They're, again, wondering, the police officer that went to go find your sister, where's he now? She was gone. He's gone. What's going on at the Bates Motel? They get some information back and forth with the sheriff, and it turns out his mother's been dead the whole time. Norman Bates, he doesn't have a mommy. They just feel like they have to understand more. They have to go and find out. So they go and find out for themselves. They poke around, they get really nosy and just start opening doors under the guise that they are the married couple. Lila goes into the house to go inspect what's going on with the mother, if she's even there, and Sam stays back to try and talk to Norman to distract him. Lila goes poking around the house, up in the bedroom. There's no sign of her except for a divot in the bed. It's a comically like shaped depression of a woman in the bed. Norman starts to cotton on to the fact that he's being held away from the house, distracted by Sam. They get into a kerfuffle, which is actually one of the editing moments in this movie that's kind of strange. They're like talking, and it's getting intense, don't get me wrong. Like, it makes sense why it goes from one scene of them talking to them fighting. It's just sort of the pace of the action is very abrupt. They're talking, and he goes, "Where is that girl? Where's that woman you came with?" And he looks out the window to see that she's at the house. He guesses correctly that she's at the house. It cuts to her inside the house, and then it cuts back to them, and they're skirmishing, but not really even. Like, Sam has him by the arms, and then Norman grabs a pot and just smashes it over Sam's head. So that was probably a longer scene, and it's not really necessary that it would have, or that it should have carried on more, and I needed to see them actually get into the struggle. But it is a little jarring, which would have worked as a pun if he smashed him in the head with a jar. But I think it was more of a pot or a vase. So, you know, it's more vasing. Lila goes down to the basement, finds mother, the real mother, dead mother, corpse. And down comes Norman behind her after she starts screaming. He's dressed up as his mother with the knife in hand, and it's revealed then in the audience's eyes, because you're not supposed to know the twist. This being just the cultural artifact that it is, I knew the twist. I got it, you know, going into it. But still, that's the moment where you realize, oh, he's wearing women's clothes, going around murdering people. What a strange guy. That's probably not the first time you think, what a strange guy. But, you know, it's the penultimate moment, probably, where you're going, what a strange guy. And then we cut to some judicial interior halfway across town. Doesn't really matter. We're in like a police precinct, and in comes a psychoanalyst or a therapist, psychologist, whatever his title is. He just explains everything that was going on with Norman the whole movie. And there's this nice little aside where it's like, so why was he in women's clothes from over here on the side of the room? And he's like, because he was a transvestite. And the psychoanalyst is like, no, actually, nope, nope.
Why was he dressed like that?
He's a transvestite.
Not exactly. A man who dresses in women's clothing in order to achieve a sexual change or satisfaction is a transvestite. But in Norman's case, he was simply doing everything possible to keep alive the illusion of his mother being alive.
That's the explanation. And sure, that's fine. It's just funny to have a character who never existed prior in the film come and explain everything that happened in the film. Like, that character might as well have been Alfred Hitchcock being like, all right, audience, folks, let's talk about what we just watched. Big cigar. Let's talk about what we just watched. Then we're left off with a final shot of Norman, or at this point, Mother, zooming in. And we're hearing again his internal dialogue through her voice. Zooms in on the fly in his hand. They know I would never hurt a fly. And he does it. He does it kind of with a smile. And it's real scary. Then we get it left off with the shot of the car being dredged out of the swamp. I don't think I ever actually got around to explaining what that fourth star was. But like I said, the performances really altogether there. Some aspects of the story were confusing, derailed a little bit. And not just because I had been watching it with friends and was a little distracted. I went back and, like I said, I rewatched it again just to make certain that certain things that I had walking away from my first impression of it weren't inaccurate. And I still don't feel like I'm off for noting that some of these details are kind of loose. Not that it's not altogether a really tight film, because it's great. It's obviously, a very well put together film, and the editing in a lot of cases is terrific. Monumental film. It makes a lot of sense why it would be considered to be one of Hitchcock's best, if not his best. I think that's probably a title for contention with his filmography. I don't know what altogether every film would be in that best of Hitchcock discussion, but I could see this being in line with those. I've seen a few others. It's understandable. It has a huge presence in the culture, as I've said before, and has been immensely influential for filmmakers going forward. It's really nice, I think, to look back on it now and to kind of examine it for what it has become in the cultural zeitgeist of today. But it's obviously very removed from what you would expect today. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. I would recommend it for most of anybody. Although I can understand at the same time why something like this would be maybe a little slow, quote unquote slow. I don't think it's slow, but I think for the average moviegoer's diet today, they're used to a different brand of excitement, of attention grabbing, intrigue, a different level of sex and violence, right? But I think, especially considering that apparently the toilet scene that was in this film was the first of its kind, or largely, I think, the first of its kind. And in that way, kind of a shocking sight. There's that moment where Norman is introducing Marion to her room, and he's kind of gesturing towards the bathroom, and he's like, we have the bed's soft, and you have parchment in case you want to write to your friends, make them jealous. And then there's the stinky room over there, and she goes, "You mean the shitter?" He goes, "Yeah." It's a funny moment without the context of knowing that it was actually kind of weird to see that in film. But it makes sense at the same time, because a lot of the film that I've seen earlier than this never really approached the bathroom. Because why would you? It would make very little sense if at this point, in the middle of the video that you're watching right now on YouTube, I showed you my bathroom. It's right over here. I could show you right now, or I could show you my closet, but, without a reason, and especially just considering the like genre that this video exists within, would be super weird. That's kind of how you could see it in the context of what film would have been like around the time this had come out. Largely a taboo that was being explored. And so this movie really is kind of constructed of taboos and twists and turns. And understanding all of that context really allows you to have a better appreciation for it. And without that, I wouldn't really be upset if somebody was like, yeah, you know, it's just kind of not for me. Like, I know what all this creates in the final, like, sensation of the film. The taboo, the gender stereotypes, like I was saying before, and then even the cross-dressing at the end. And a lot of what goes into the film allows you to better understand what the message might have been. It's a very good film altogether, if you could believe it. Hitchcock, you know, hit it out of the park with Psycho. Now I am able to express just how good a movie this is. So I rate it 4 out of 5 stars. I would recommend it. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about it right now. Bye.